General Hospital will reveal under the gloomy sky of Port Charles, where the shadows of crime and conspiracy loomed, a deadly plan was set into motion. Valentin returned with a single purpose, to kill Carly. His pent-up fury and deeply buried wounds left him no choice but to eliminate anyone who might stand in his way. Carly, despite Jason's repeated warnings about the danger Brennan posed, remained indifferent. She had no idea that the real threat was not Brennan, but Valentin himself. Stepping into the dimly lit Metro Court hotel room, Valentin was taken aback to find Carly present. He advanced with unwavering determination, but in the blink of an eye, something completely unexpected happened. From the darkness, Brennan emerged, his presence exuding a chilling danger. His gaze was sharp, his smirk laced with malice, and in that instant, Valentin realized that his plan had been exposed. Brennan had not only anticipated his move but had already devised a counterattack. The hotel room instantly transformed into a silent battlefield. The air thickened with tension, as all three individuals understood that a single misstep could mean death. Carly, who had placed her trust in Brennan, began to sense that something was amiss. Jason's warnings echoed in her mind, planting seeds of doubt. She had never truly seen Brennan's true nature, but now, as he stood before her with an unsettling composure, a growing fear crept into her thoughts. Valentin grasped the reality of the situation. He had walked straight into a trap. He had come to kill Carly, but Brennan had anticipated his move, waiting patiently like a predator ready to strike. Brennan's strategy was clear: eliminate Valentin before he could make his move. Every second counted now. Valentin could not kill Carly at this moment. If he did, Brennan would immediately take control of the situation and dispose of him without hesitation. Brennan exuded an air of confidence, his relaxed demeanor only heightening the sense of danger. The room was no longer a mere hotel suite, it had become a battlefield, where only one person would walk away alive. Carly observed the two men carefully, her mind piecing together the fragments of a puzzle she hadn't realized existed. If Valentin had truly come to kill her, why had he stopped? If Brennan was someone she could trust, why did he seem so unnervingly composed, as if everything was unfolding exactly as he had planned? The questions surged through her mind, and suddenly, the truth became clear: she had placed her trust in the wrong person. Brennan was not her protector. He was the real monster, the mastermind pulling the strings all along. He had orchestrated every move, and if she continued to believe in him, she would be nothing more than his next victim. Another possibility surfaced in her mind. She turned her attention to Valentin, and in his eyes, she saw calculation but also a grim determination. They now had a common enemy. Brennan was the real danger, the force that had led them all to this point of no return. In that defining moment, Carly and Valentin understood that they could no longer be adversaries. A silent agreement formed between them, unspoken yet undeniable. There was no need for words, no need for formalities, only one objective remained. Brennan had to die. Both of them knew there was no room for hesitation. Brennan had maintained control for too long, and if they allowed him more time, he would not hesitate to eliminate them both. A plan took shape in their minds, a trap meticulously set, a perfect act of retribution. Brennan might have believed himself to be the master of this game, but he had made one fatal mistake, underestimating them. Carly and Valentin had now aligned with a singular purpose, and they would strike before Brennan could make his final move. Outside the Metro Court, the night cloaked Port Charles in its shroud, concealing the dangerous machinations taking shape within. Death lurked in the shadows, but this time, it would not come for Valentin or Carly. It awaited Brennan. And when the moment was right, he would have no escape. Brennan, exuding an air of triumph, made no effort to conceal his sinister machinations. With a chilling confidence, he laid bare the full extent of his malevolence, his manipulation of pikemen, his carefully orchestrated plot to bring down Sonny, and his grand vision of seizing control over the underworld of Port Charles. Every move he had made was part of a larger, calculated scheme, a web of deception that only he had been privy to. But his ambitions did not stop at Valentin. Carly, too, was merely another expendable piece on his chessboard, a pawn he would not hesitate to sacrifice if she dared to obstruct his path. He saw no value in her beyond what she could offer in the moment. If she became a liability, she would be eliminated without hesitation. For the first time in a long time, Carly felt an unfamiliar chill creep down her spine. She, who had always relied on her sharp instincts and unyielding survival skills, now found herself confronted with a terrifying reality: she had placed her trust in the wrong person. The lies Brennan had whispered, the charming facade he had so effortlessly maintained, had all been nothing more than the mask of a true monster. Everything she thought she knew shattered in an instant. This was not a man she could manipulate or outmaneuver. This was a predator who had already calculated every possible move, ensuring that no matter what she did, the outcome would always be in his favor. The realization struck with full force: Brennan had never been her ally. He had been playing her from the very beginning, and now, she was caught in his web with no way out. Valentin could no longer suppress the fury that boiled within him. Every muscle in his body tensed with the weight of betrayal, and for the first time, he fully grasped the extent of Brennan's deception. He had been a pawn in a much larger game, a disposable piece manipulated and maneuvered into place without even realizing it. Brennan had played him masterfully, exploiting his every weakness, leading him down a path where he had no control, no escape. The realization was both infuriating and sobering: he was not the strategist he had once prided himself on being. He had been outplayed, his every move anticipated, his every action leading exactly where Brennan had wanted. The cold truth settled deep within him. If he did not act first, if he hesitated for even a moment, Brennan would not think twice about eliminating him. The man standing before him was ruthless, a master manipulator who had spent years perfecting the art of control. Brennan thrived on power, on the ability to dictate the fates of those around him. He did not tolerate threats. He did not entertain loose ends. Valentin was no exception. If he allowed this game to continue, he would be the next casualty, discarded without a second thought. But something else dawned on him: he was not the only one Brennan had deceived. Carly, the woman who stood in the crosshairs of this conflict, had been just as blind. She had been caught in the same web, lulled into a false sense of security, believing she had the upper hand when in reality, she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Brennan had no more use for her than he did for Valentin. If she became an inconvenience, she would meet the same fate. For the first time, Valentin saw the situation with complete clarity. There was no winning this alone. Any attempt to act independently would be doomed to failure. Brennan had ensured that. But there was another way, an unpredictable, dangerous gamble that no one, not even Brennan, would have anticipated. Instead of following the path Brennan had so meticulously laid out, Valentin did something no one could have expected. He turned to Carly and revealed everything. The words came quickly, spilling out in a rush of raw truth. He confessed the full extent of Brennan's manipulation, exposing every dark secret that had been kept from her. He spoke of the lies, the hidden agendas, the way Brennan had used them both as mere pieces on a chessboard, maneuvering them into positions where they would inevitably destroy each other. Valentin spared no details, his voice edged with the fury of a man who had finally seen the full picture. Carly, standing across from him, absorbed every word in stunned silence. He could see the shift in her expression, the dawning horror as she pieced together the puzzle. She had believed herself in control, had convinced herself that she could handle whatever was thrown at her, but now, the truth shattered every illusion. Brennan had orchestrated everything. He had never been her protector, never been her ally. He had simply been waiting for the moment she outlived her usefulness. Valentin watched as the understanding settled into her features, as her body stiffened with the same realization that had overtaken him. Brennan had never intended to let either of them walk away. The air in the room grew heavier, the tension crackling like a live wire. A silent agreement passed between them in that moment, an unspoken decision forged from necessity. If they wanted to survive, if they wanted to take back control, there was only one course of action left. Brennan had to die. And this time, he would not be the one setting the rules. Carly stood frozen, her body rigid with fury as the final pieces of the puzzle locked into place. The weight of her realization hit her like a crashing wave. She had been a pawn, manipulated, deceived, used in a game far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. But that ended now. The blindfold had been ripped away, and the truth was as clear as day. Brennan had played her, just as he had played Valentin, orchestrating every move with the precision of a master manipulator. But he had made one critical miscalculation: he had underestimated her. The fire of betrayal burned in her chest, but it was not just anger that filled her now, it was resolve. She would not be a victim. She would not allow herself to be discarded like a meaningless piece on Brennan's chessboard. The fear, the doubt, the hesitation, they no longer had a place within her. For the first time, she and Valentin shared a singular, undeniable truth: they had a common enemy. And there was only one way to end this game on their terms. Brennan had to die. The unspoken agreement between them formed in an instant. No words were necessary. Their mutual hatred for each other had been eclipsed by something far greater: the need for survival, the desire for vengeance. They were no longer adversaries, no longer two people caught in a web of manipulation, forced into opposing roles. They were now allies in the most dangerous of causes. Standing in the dimly lit room, the air thick with the stench of betrayal, they made a silent pact. Two former enemies now bound by a singular mission, determined to drag Brennan into the abyss he had so meticulously crafted. He had spent years controlling and eliminating those who stood in his way, but now, the tables had turned. He would not see it coming. He would not be given the chance to counter their move. There was no room for hesitation. No time for doubt. The path before them was set, and there was only one way forward. Brennan would not live to see another day. The hunt had begun. In the depths of Metro Court, beneath the flickering glow of dim hotel lights, a silent but deadly plan began to take shape. Every move, every contingency had been calculated with ruthless precision. This was not a hastily thrown-together act of vengeance but a perfectly orchestrated execution. A trap so seamless, so inevitable, that Brennan would never see it coming. The moment he realized the betrayal, his fate would have already been sealed. There would be no second chances, no desperate last-minute escape, no opportunity to manipulate his way out of this. The web had been spun, and Brennan was already ensnared in its threads. The method of his demise was inconsequential. A well-placed bullet piercing the stillness of the night, a blade striking with cold efficiency, or a meticulously staged accident that would leave no trace of foul play, all were possibilities, but none truly mattered. What mattered was the certainty of the outcome. Brennan would not leave this encounter alive. His days of manipulation, his calculated betrayals, his iron grip over the criminal underworld of Port Charles, every last shred of power he had accumulated would crumble in an instant. He had pulled the strings for too long, dictating the fate of those who unknowingly played into his hands, but now the game had turned against him. For years, he had thrived in the chaos of Port Charles, navigating its dark alleys of corruption and secrecy, preying on those who underestimated him. He had eliminated obstacles without remorse, silencing threats before they could rise against him. But for all his careful planning, he had failed to foresee one thing: his own downfall. He had never considered the possibility that the very people he had sought to control would be the ones to orchestrate his undoing. Carly and Valentin were no longer his pawns. They had risen above the roles he had assigned them, shifting the game in their favor. This was not an act of desperation but one of absolute intent. There was no hesitation, no lingering doubt. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. The stage was set, and Brennan, oblivious to the fate awaiting him, was already walking toward his own destruction. The final act had begun, and there would be no encore. By the time Brennan understood the truth, that he had been outplayed, deceived, and marked for death, his time would have already run out. The echoes of his own miscalculations would be the last thing he would hear before the darkness claimed him. For Carly and Valentin, there was no guilt, no regret. This was not just revenge. This was justice, delivered by those who had survived his treachery. And when the dust settled, only one truth would remain: Brennan had never truly been in control. His reign of terror was ending, not with a bang of power, but with the quiet certainty of inevitable death. Port Charles had always been a place of schemes and betrayals, a city where the powerful ruled from the shadows. But this time, the ones who had been hunted had become the hunters. And for Brennan, there would be no redemption, no last-minute salvation. The final chapter of his story had already been written. He just didn't know it yet.